All right. Make sure this shit's recording. I have been wanting to start a channel for a while, and I'm gonna finally do it. At least I think so. I don't really know what I'm doing, but my plan right now is to just do a little reading of some articles. So I think I'm going to call this Design Headlines. I'm going to read some articles from Business of Home and just give you my hot takes on it. So this is a little bit of me using this as an excuse to get up to date, to learn some things, and while sharing it with you. So it's like a double whammy where I can kill two birds with one stone. At least that's the idea. So we shall see. First things first. I'm not going to go into a whole rigmarole of like telling you what the deal is with this, because at any point in time anyone new can watch a video, and I'm not going to do that all the time, and I don't really know what this is, so we're just going to do it and see what happens. So I should also note I will not be including the swallowing. I had an elaborate conversation with Dave, my partner, about misophonia and how rage-inducing it makes me when I listen to podcasts where people don't take out the swallowing sounds. It's horrifying, and will not do that to you. Not here. All right, that's all. So this article is from Business of Home by Aidan Taylor from January 19th, 2024. I'm also probably going to do some articles that are really old because I might find them really relevant. So yeah, it might not be super topical, but whatever. Okay. Does your firm have a minimum budget? It's essential in any project to know how much your work is worth and how much your clients are willing to invest. So that's everyone's on the same page. This week we've asked 5 designers: Linda Allen, Linda Banks, Janelle Blakely, Photopoulos. I'm going to butcher these names. Photopoulos. I'm going to get hate. Kevin Isbell and Katie Rosenfeld. How they set their firm's minimums and discuss the expectations with clients. So I try to have a minimum. My minimum is typically, it was supposed to be $20,000. But sometimes when I have a repeat client that I know I really like, then I make an exception. Or if I'm in a situation where I just kind of need some project filler, then I might make an exception. But people with low budgets are the worst clients. They're the hardest to work with, the hardest to please. They take the longest to get through. And generally speaking, that's just been my experience. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are. This is from Katie Rosenfeld. I don't have a minimum, but I have an idea of what our typical project scope looks like. So I always establish a realistic and honest budget before we begin working with clients to ensure we are all speaking the same language. If we are not aligned, then usually we aren't a good match. And I could not agree more with this, because I had a call probably, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, with somebody who I really enjoyed her. There was no red flags whatsoever. She was an older lady who kind of just needed some help here and there. But at the end of the day, her budget, $50,000 to do a lot of upgrading, like furnishings. None of them were full rooms. And, it included millwork, it included new furniture, window treatments, like the list goes on. And I just knew, like, rolling in my design fees, which I can't remember what I told her, but I want to say I told her that, I don't remember, I might have said 16,000 would be where it would be like starting from, maybe even 20. I honestly don't remember. And then I said, like, rolling in your budget on top of that, that's just not going to work. So off the hop, we just had the conversation. And sometimes clients just don't know, but if that client can't make that work, then it's move it along. We don't have time for that. So basically I told her, I'll see if I can find a designer who maybe fits the bill, but there's always a client for everyone. She could probably find somebody who does like design plan only, but at this point in time, I just, what you're going to get, and it's just, I don't want to deal with it. This one is Linda Banks. So beyond the budget, we're much more interested in the type of project and what kind of people, we're much more interested in the type of project and what kind of people the clients are than setting a hard and fast minimum. Could not agree more. 15 years after operating behind closed doors, I bought a freestanding build and opened a furniture showroom and retail store. That was a game changer for us. Girl, I can only imagine it is, because you're making so much more money on the furnishings and you're able to source quicker. It makes everything a lot quicker. We could pass along smaller projects and one-room consultations to our showroom staff. Well, that's genius. That allowed the design studio to focus on two types of projects: ongoing repeat business from existing clients and whole house projects or substantial renovations and decorating for new clients. I'm also a sucker for a great kitchen remodel. I would always say our best clients get our best work, and it has nothing to do with a budget. Yes. Okay. I love what she's saying. I have talked about this before, probably back on my podcast. I did used to have a podcast, which I recommend listening to, Real Talk Design, where I interviewed a lot of designers and just talked about my journey because I'm self-taught. This is something I actually want to create like an actual structured system around, but it's like everything kind of gets a point in a sense. So you've got like a series of things that help you make decisions. And it's true, budget is not always the number one thing. So for example, having a healthy budget, let's call that 2 points. I'm just making up numbers for the sake of making up numbers. Let's say that the scope of the project and it being like a whole room or an entire reno based on whatever it is for your firm that's important, maybe that gets 2 points for, meeting the criteria that you set. Then you have the style that the client is looking for, whether it's in line with the style you're looking for or where you want to push yourself, whatever that is. That gets like a bunch of points. Then you have like the client themselves, their personality. Maybe that can be a point system of 5. I don't know. I haven't really thought it through that much. But at the end of the day, it's a bunch of things that kind of coupled together and whether or not that client's worthwhile. So for example, the budget could be perfect, but if the client is an asshole, then you don't want to work with that client. Also, another thing for me is when I meet with a client first thing, I want to throw out ideas immediately because I want to see how they respond to my ideas, because I can't stand working with a client who responds with like, oh, I don't know, or I thought that, or I don't know. I want to have a client who like gets excited and is like wowed by everything I'm saying, because everything else is going to be that much easier going forward. So I actually kind of I think that this is really important, what Linda Banks is saying. And I think that there's something to be said. There has to be some form of some minimum where it makes sense and it's financially viable for your business. But, sometimes it is more than that. All right. So this is Janelle Blakely Fotopoulos. Sorry, Janelle. All right, set the tone. Managing expectations from the get-go is critical to building trust with clients. Once we finalize the scope of work, we establish a starting investment to ensure we're aligned with our clients before going under contract. The minimum is directly tied to the scope of work every time. The minimum is directly tied to the scope of work every time. Oh, okay, got it. Duh. I didn't get it, but okay. It makes no sense to tell a client that our project minimum is 100K if their scope of work would require 300K. I mean, I feel like that makes sense. If their starting investment is higher than the client wants to invest, then the scope of work gets reduced to fall within the range they're comfortable with. First of all, my form, when they fill out a form, they actually have to fill out and self kind of identify what scope that they're in. So for example, like they tell me what kind of project they want, furnishing only, renovation and furnishing, whatever. And then they say like less than 50 to 100 to 300, whatever. So like immediately when that lead comes in, if their budget doesn't fall in line with where I want them to be, then they're less of a hot lead for me. I'm still going to talk to them because I want to identify whether this is just something that they don't understand or whatever. I totally just lost my train of thought. Oh, okay. So a lot of people will give you a massive scope and then they don't understand what that's going to cost. So I often tell clients, whatever you're thinking in your head, it's probably going to be like 2 to 3 times the amount that you have in your brain. And I think that's pretty common. And that kind of lays the groundwork immediately for them to mentally prepare for a higher number. Number 2, when this happens, I tell clients that we don't want to minimize the scope in lots of rooms. So you're doing half of a room. You want to eliminate rooms completely and you want to focus on full rooms. Another thing for me is I used to have a 3-room minimum. That's not a hard and fast rule, but typically speaking, I find that the smaller the project, which kind of equates to the smaller the budget, but the more it just takes everything longer. So I still end up having an hour and a half long meeting for my presentations or even longer. Whereas like I could have 5 rooms and I'm going to have an hour and a half to 2 hour long meeting. It's just, I can't remember what that rule is, but there's a rule of like, you're going to take the time it takes that you allow for yourself regardless. So anyway, Kevin Isbell. Establishing minimums for interior design projects is a key aspect of my business strategy. I start by considering the overall square footage of the project. This baseline calculation helps create an initial framework for the scope of the firm. From here, I apply a dollar per square foot estimation. This estimate isn't arbitrary. It's meticulously calculated based on an analysis of historical data from previous projects. At this point, I feel like hopefully we've all been there to some degree. If you follow any business coach for interior design, this is generally what the best practice for determining square footage fees. When I communicate this to potential clients, I present it as a range. For instance, I love a for instance. Okay, you can anticipate the total pre-tax to spend to be between X and Y per square footage. This range is not just a financial estimate, but also a tool for setting realistic expectations, allowing clients to quickly assess the financial scope of the project and decide if it aligns with their budget. By being upfront about costs, I can ensure that the projects I undertake are a good fit for both the client and my design practice. Okay. Yes, I like this. I will say this is something I struggle with a little bit. I come up with a square footage, but then all of a sudden when the project becomes like much larger, then I find that costs become astronomical. So I then turns into, okay, if it's smaller than this square footage, it's this amount per square foot. If it's bigger than this square footage, it's this per square foot. And it just becomes this whole, it just turns into this overcomplicated thing. So I like it in theory, but I generally feel a little gun shy to say anything up front because I feel like there's a pain in the ass fee, I like this client, but I feel like maybe they're going to be difficult. So there's something to be said about rolling that into the fee and understanding that, I don't know. So this is Linda Allen. Once I know our personality is a good fit, 1,000,000%, 100,000,000%. Currently, I do a meet and greet, which is complimentary, which is controversial. Although there are some design coaches who suggest this and some who don't. But at this point, for me, I don't feel good about doing a consultation that's paid. And after I meet with that client, I decide, because this has happened to me numerous times, I decide that I don't feel like we're a good fit. For whatever reason, personality, taste, expectations that I'm feeling, and then I don't want to move forward. And now I've collected $500, whatever it is. And, the client, regardless of if they got value, imagine if they have to do that every time they're trying to meet I don't know. It just doesn't feel good for me. And so I like to do a meet and greet where it's less about giving ideas, even though I'm going to, because that's part of my process for weeding clients out. But it's more about I want to figure out if I like you and if I want to work with you. Because at the end of the day, somebody else said this, any project is only as good as your relationship with your client. So that's kind of what I do now. Once our personalities are a good fit, I create a set design fee from the project scope that makes sense for my clients and me, but I don't usually do small decorating jobs unless it's for repeat clients. Agree. Same here. This is very difficult because I put 500% into my work. That is so true. That is the problem with small decorating jobs is I'm incapable of doing what is an acceptable amount for the price a client's willing to pay. I'm going to go all in and give 500% every time. But for me to give 500%, it's just too expensive for the client to pay for that. So that was the business of home. The article was, again, does your firm have a minimum budget? I am going to put the link below for you to read it on your own if you like. I would love it if you subscribed. I don't really know what this channel is going to be. I'm just kind of trying to play with some content ideas. What I am planning on doing though is more of this type of stuff where I'm going to share some of the articles that I find, different strategies, whatever, and give you my hot take on it and how, or if I do or don't implement it into my business. But another big thing that I'm really excited to be doing is I'm going to be sharing some of my own tools that I have been using. I got an iPad last year, finally. I mean, I've had an iPad before, but since starting my business, it finally got an iPad, and it has been revolutionary as far as working with clients and going into for consultations. I created a form for my kickoff meetings, which is like my site survey, which is literally changed my life and made it like completely brainless for me to go into a client's home, and I don't have to think too hard about it because I have pre-made forms that I load up in GoodNotes. I take the notes right on it. I can then take that and copy and paste templates. I don't have to print anything. It's kind of kicking it old school as far as like taking notes with like a pen and paper vibe, but I really liked it because before I would like haul around my laptop and I'd try to, have everything and type it into Notion, which by the way is another thing I'm going to be sharing a lot of tips and tricks. I love Notion. It's been a game changer for me as well. But this year for me is all about systematizing my business, making everything as efficient and easy to execute, because if you don't know, I have ADHD and I have to make everything, I have to spell everything out. I have to make everything easy and laid out for me on a silver platter. Otherwise, I don't action things. I procrastinate like a son of a bitch, and I'm basically, I need to make everything as simple as possible. So what I'm trying to do is systematize as much as possible. But like, I have done a lot of design coaching. I have paid for forms, and if I'm being honest, I do feel like there's always gaps left out. There's always something missing. There's always, I need more. I'm going to be giving this to you like granular. I'm talking like deep. We're going to go deep, and it's going to be incredible, and I think it's going to be really helpful. And it's going to be, honestly, if this existed for me, I'd be all about it. Anyways, that's all for now. I haven't really come up with an outro yet, so that's it. Okay, so that was I don't want to deal with it. Okay, I think that's all you need to know. Okay.